Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War, Behind the Battles with your host Bang and Dang.
here we are with some more hate crimes.
Yeah, basically, because we're going before the war, the prelude to the war, kind of. We kind of hinted at this during the John Brown episode, but things were tense in Kansas leading up to the war. That's what we got. Bleeding Kansas, also known as Bloody Kansas, or the Border War. Violent civil confrontations in the territory from 1854 to 59. They had electoral fraud, raids, assaults, murders carried out in the Kansas territory and neighboring Missouri by pro-slavery border ruffians, plus retaliatory raids carried out by anti-slavery free staters.
Oh, shit.
It was not a good time to be Kansas.
All right.
Well, by the mid-19th century, as abolitionism gained traction in the United States, Congress struggled to maintain a delicate balance of power between northern and free states and southern slave state representatives. The westward expansion of Americans to the frontier, coupled with ambitions for a transcontinental railroad, which linked the East to California, clearly. It pushed for incorporation of western territories into the Union, and we know what they wanted. No slavery. Yes, slavery.
All right.
The burning question was whether these new territories would permit slavery upon achieving statehood, a debate that had already roiled Congress up after the Mexican-American War, after they got Arizona and all that shit. Like, should we put slaves there, too?
Right.
No.
Wow. The Compromise of 1850, which we all know, offered a temporary solution. It allowed residents of the Utah and New Mexico territories to decide if slavery could be good or not through a popular vote, which, hey,
Let the people decide, huh?
right? This set a precedent for popular sovereignty in the ongoing national struggle over slavery. May 1854. Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois, he introduced the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This created territories of Kansas and Nebraska from Indian lands for settlements by United States citizens. The act, it was calculated move to appease Southern congressmen who opposed earlier proposals to admit Nebraska as a state due to the Missouri Compromise of 1820.
There's a lot of so-called compromises that didn't do anything to compromise. Well, that compromise in 1820 had banned slavery in U.S. territory north of the 3630 latitude line, except for Missouri.
Right.
And Southerners feared Nebraska's admission as a free state would tip the balance toward the abolitionist Northerners in Congress, which, yeah. Douglas's solution was to organize two territories, Kansas and Nebraska, and include a popular sovereignty clause allowing settlers to vote on slavery legality in each territory. This provision directly contradicted and effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise, and both territories lay entirely north of the line that was established in that compromise.
I mean,
and west of the Mississippi, which you weren't allowed to do either.
I mean, if they would have just allowed that to keep on happening, you could have avoided a civil war, and sooner or later, it would have been abolished.
Would it have?
Yeah. Douglas, he assumed Nebraska settlers would prohibit slavery, given its lack of appeal there. While Kansas, closer to the slave state of Missouri, they would likely permit it, preserving the balance of slave and free states, which they were like, okay, cool, we can win here. Nebraska's path to free state status was indeed secure.
Sure was.
But Kansas became a flashpoint. Southerners celebrated the act as a victory, believing it secured their interests, while Northerners decried it as betrayal of the Missouri Compromise. Abolitionists, well, enraged by the repeal, they saw Kansas as a battleground to resist slavery's expansion, right? Fucking Kansas. While pro-slavery forces aimed to claim it. The territory quickly became the nation's ideological crucible, erupting into its most violent place. Yeah, Kansas was fucked, dude.
And the term bleeding Kansas...
Isn't that why Jayhawks? What were the Jayhawks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the term bleeding Kansas was coined by Horace Greeley's New York Tribune, capturing the territory's descent into chaos. June 16th, 1856, the Tribune, they first referenced Kansas bleeding in a report on the North American National Convention, where a Kansas delegate, Colonel Perry, he declared that Kansas bleeding at every pore. It would indirectly sway votes for the convention's presidential candidate more than any other state, they say.
Right.
September 13th, 1856, the Tribune published a poem by Charles Wayman, cementing bleeding Kansas as a rallying cry for the violent struggle between pro-slavery and abolitionist settlers vying for control. And it goes, far in the west rolls the thunder. The tumult of the battle is raging, where bleeding Kansas is waging war against slavery. That's called Fremont and Victory, the prize song by Charles Wayman.
following the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in May of 1854, which allowed settlers to decide the fate of slavery through popular sovereignty, which is what everybody wanted. A rush of immigrants poured into... Whoa, where's Donald Trump? A rush of immigrants poured into the Kansas Territory to shape its future. Pro-slavery advocates, primarily from nearby Missouri, which was a slave state, they arrived with fervor to expand slavery's reach.
Of course they did.
Many were driven by Southern ideologies, settling towns like Leavenworth and Atchison. President Franklin Pierce's administration, one of the worst presidents ever, aligning with pro-slavery interests, appointed territorial officials who shared its view.
Rumors that northern abolitionists were flooding Kansas prompted thousands of non-resident pro-slavery men, which were known as border ruffians or Southern Yankees, prompted them to cross from Missouri, aiming to sway local politics through sheer numbers and intimidation. Oh. These factions dominated early territorial elections, often resorting to fraud and violence. Oh, what does that sound like? November 1854, thousands of armed border ruffians invaded Kansas, rigging the election for a non-voting congressional delegate in favor of a pro-slavery Democrat, John Wilkins Whitfield.
Oh, all right.
A congressional investigation later revealed rampant fraud. Of the 2,843 votes cast, 1,729 were fraudulent, compared to 1,114 legal votes.
That's crazy.
In one precinct, only 20 of the 604 were actual residents of Kansas.
That's insane.
In another, 35 were residents and 226 were not. Jeez.
And people, this is exactly what's been happening ever since, to every election ever.
Well, not only that, you got both sides that gerrymander districts. You see these guys are like,
it's
like snakes swerving through fucking
It's the
shit
most-
just to get their voters.
It's the most rigged system. That's why. Never mind, not going into it. So, America's a corporation, not a country. Simultaneously, it happened in 1912.
Yes.
Simultaneously, Northern abolitionists, actually earlier than that, like 1895, but really 1912. Simultaneously, Northern abolitionists mobilized to make Kansas a free state, urging free soilers or free staters to settle in the territory. They come on down to Kansas. You don't have to bring no slaves. We don't like no slaves.
White people are everywhere.
The most infamous of these, you guessed it,
Elizabeth.
old John Brown body.
Sure did.
He moved from Ohio to Leavenworth.
He sure did.
Became a radical leader in the anti-slavery cause,
He sure did.
which we did. Northern benevolent societies like the Boston-based New England Immigrant Aid Company formed just before the Kansas-Nebraska Act. They funded and organized anti-slavery settlers in Kansas and throughout the country.
That's crazy, dude. Paying people
Right.
basically to go
Right.
force a vote of something.
Though claims of sending 20,000 New Englanders were exaggerated, only about 1,200 arrived by late 1855. You might have sent them, but only 1,200 arrived.
They're like, bye.
Well, they probably got murdered.
Or that, or went to somewhere else.
Right. These efforts, amplified by Eastern newspapers, stoked national frenzy over Kansas's fate. Have you seen those Bigfoot blogs?
Stupid.
I know, but they have this one of this family like, I heard this thing. My first vlog, guys. We heard this thing about the Oregon Trail. We're headed out west. Got me and the family. But another right. Here's an update. One of them got cholera. And the other ones were dysentery. We're all dysentery.
Dysentery.
Yeah, dysentery. We all got that. And the next one is, well, cholera struck down Johnny, and we had to leave George back there. And next thing you know, look at this river, the Kansas River. It's huge. Should we cross it or ford it? And the next thing, well, we lost about everything we got.
Have you seen the Bible ones?
Yeah.
Those ones are actually pretty cool.
All right. Well, that was pretty hilarious. And then the last one, it was him by himself. Well, here I am, the gang man. He goes, well, not the gang, just me. He goes, family's dead, but here we are in Oregon.
Okay. That's hilarious. A vivid, possibly apocryphal tales of abolitionist minister Henry Ward Beecher, brother of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Oh, he was the brother of Uncle Tom's Cabin author Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Yeah, Harriet Beecher Stowe.
He's shipping Sharps rifles to Kansas settlers in crates labeled Bibles, earning them the nickname Beecher's Bibles.
Oh.
These movements birthed staunchly Republican and abolitionist strongholds like Lawrence, Topeka, Manhattan, Kansas, which became centers of resistance against pro-slavery forces.
Oh, wow. 30th of March, 1855. Kansas Territory held its first election for a territorial legislator, a body tasked with deciding whether slavery would be permitted. The stakes were monumental, and just as in the November 1854 election, pro-slavery border ruffians from Missouri flooded the territory to cast their illegal votes. These armed interlopers, driven by Southern ideologies, secured a landslide for pro-slavery candidates who won 37 to 39 seats.
Damn.
Only 2 free staters, Martin Conway and Samuel Houston, from Riley County, not that Samuel Houston. From Riley County, they were elected. Free staters denounced the results as blatantly fraudulent, pointing to the influx of non-resident Missourians.
Clearly, Territorial Governor Andrew Reeder, appointed by Franklin Pierce, he attempted a compromise by invalidating results in just 11 of the 40 races due to clear fraud, but this satisfied neither side. A special election, May 22nd, 1855, to fill those seats shifted dramatically, with 8 of the 11 new ones being free staters.
Ooh.
Despite this, obviously pro-slavery forces still commanded 29 to 10 majority in the legislature.
Couldn't do anything about it. Wow. It was the 2nd of July, 1855. Pro-slavery legislature convened in the new territorial capital of Pawnee, but promptly overturned the May special election results, reseating the pro-slavery delegates elected in March. Fucking corrupt bastards, dude. Insane. After just 1 week, they relocated the capital to Shawnee Mission, near the Missouri border.
I bet.
A move that facilitated closer ties with pro-slavery allies. Wow. After just 1 week, they relocated the capital to Shawnee Mission, near the Missouri border. Obviously, they wanted to get closer to Missouri. There, they adopted a stringent slave code modeled on Missouri's, and they passed laws favoring slaveholders, solidifying their grip on the territory.
As usual, as you would expect, outraged free staters responded by electing their own delegates to a rival legislature in Topeka, declaring it the legitimate government and branding the pro-slavery Lecompton legislature as bogus.
All right.
Straight out of Lecompton. The Topeka body drafted the Topeka Constitution, the territory's first, and elected Charles Robinson. Oh, damn. Still counting 1, 2, 3s, baby. Who was a Massachusetts native and New England Emigrant Aid Company agent as the territorial governor.
Oh, wow.
Meanwhile, President Pierce, a pro-Southern Democrat, he sacked Governor Reeder on August 16, 1855, and that was for his tepid handling of the crisis, replacing him with the staunchly pro-slavery Wilson Channon. Reeder, fearing for his safety, he fled Kansas in disguise. Damn, they're about to kill him.
Damn. They just didn't replace you. They killed your ass.
Well, trying to leave something.
Damn.
What happened to him? Think he died?
Sooner or later.
Right. I think it's still alive. 200 years.
Right. Pierce, he refused to recognize the Topeka legislature. He labeled it insurrectionists in a January 24th, 1856 message to Congress. The existence of dual governments, one pro-slavery in Lecompton, one free state in Topeka, it mirrored the deepening rift in Kansas.
I would say Kansas is not a state technically, so I guess they can still do whatever they want.
Right. Inflaming tensions and galvanizing both sides. In response to the disputed elections and escalating violence, Congress, they dispatched a 3-man special committee.
Oh, whoa, 3 men.
They're like, why don't you go investigate what's going on over there? They did that in 1856. July of 1856, the report that they came back with confirmed the Free Staters' claims. Had the March 30th, 1855 election been restricted to actual settlers, a free state legislator would have been elected. The committee declared Lecompton legislature an illegally constituted body with no authority to pass valid laws, validating accusations of fraud and exposing the pro-slavery government as illegitimate.
And thus exposing the president as fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. 1857, Pierce, he was succeeded by James Buchanan, which was another Northern Democrat sympathetic to Southern pro-slavery interests.
Sure was.
That year, a pro-slavery constitutional convention convened in Lecompton, producing the Lecompton Constitution by early November, which was a document endorsed by Buchanan that protected slavery. December 21st, 1857, it was submitted to Kansans for a special vote on a special slavery article. But free staters boycotted the election, knowing the Constitution would allow existing slaves to remain even if the article was rejected.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't have to. And why are they getting their own Constitution anyways after we already was ruled that it was fake?
Wow. The Lecompton Constitution passed. 6,226 votes to 569. It was marred by irregularities. Congress, they recognized the fraud, ordering a new election.
Of course they did.
2nd of April, 1858. Kansas voters, well, they overwhelmingly rejected the document, 11,812 to 1,926.
How'd there get so much more when it was only 6,200 to 5,569 earlier?
Nobody knows. This dealt a big blow to the pro-slavery hopes. While the Lecompton Constitution hung in limbo, free state delegates drafted a third document, the Leavenworth Constitution, which passed also on the 18th of May, 1858. More radical than prior free state proposals, it granted suffrage to every male citizen, regardless of race. A bold stance for the era. Damn.
That means voting rights,
Right.
buds.
Yes. Women's suffrage, black suffrage, right? However, turnout was low, and some free state Democrats opposed it.
Of course they did. Submitted to the U.S. Senate, January 6, 1859, Insurrection Day. It met a lukewarm response and died in committee, overshadowed by ongoing territorial strife. In 1859, free state forces rallied to draft the Wyandotte Constitution, a definitive anti-slavery proposal. October 4th, 1859, Kansas voters approved it in referendum, 10,421 to 5,530.
All right.
Well, despite its passage, Southern-controlled Senate stalled its confirmation, wary of admitted and free state. The tide turned in January of 1861 when Southern senators withdrew as their states seceded, right? Which cleared the path for Kansas' admission as a free state on the same day under the Wyandotte Constitution. Yeah, they had to go like, oh man, all our brethrens are leaving.
This is just sickening, this whole thing that's happening. It's just sad. 21st of November, 1855, Douglas County, Kansas. Personal feud turned deadly, igniting the so-called Wakarusa War. Pro-slavery settler Franklin Coleman shot dead Free Stater Charles Dow. It was a dispute rooted in personal matters rather than the broader slavery debate. Okay, cool. Dow's death marked the first murder of an American settler in Kansas.
Oh.
A grim milestone in escalating tensions. Instead of arresting Coleman, Douglas County Sheriff Samuel Jones, pro-slavery ally,
Of course.
targeted another Free Stater, Jacob Branston, who had been associated with Dow. When a Free State posse rescued Branson from custody, the incident spiraled into the first armed confrontation between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers in Kansas.
Are they saying the sheriff framed this Jacob Branson guy? And they're saying that he killed him? Wow.
He was a...
Patsy?
Wow, dude. That's just some crazy shit going on here.
Territorial Governor Wilson Shannon, who was a pro-slavery appointee of Franklin Pierce, he called out the Kansas militia to restore order, but the force that assembled was overwhelmingly composed of pro-slavery Missourians, which we've already know they're called the Border Ruffians. These outsiders, armed with stolen weapons and a cannon, encamped outside the Free State stronghold of Lawrence, threatening violence. In response, Lawrence rallied its own militia, led by Charles Robinson. Counted 1, 2, 3. He said, let's go. The governor elected by the anti-slavery Topeka legislator, and James Lane, who was a fiery abolitionist leader.
All right.
Standoff teetered on the edge of an all-out battle with both sides armed and defiant.
Uh-oh.
I said, come on.
Well, that crisis de-escalated very quickly, but only when Governor Shannon, he brokered a fragile peace agreement between Robinson, Lane, and David Rice Atchison, which is a prominent pro-slavery Missouri senator, leading the Border Ruffians. The Missourians reluctantly dispersed, averting a larger clash. However, the conflict claimed one more life. This happened on the 6th of December. Free Stater Thomas Barber was shot dead near Lawrence, adding to the territory's growing toll.
Oh, jeez.
Was that 2?
May 21st, 1856, pro-slavery Democrats and Missouri Border Ruffians, they stormed Lawrence, Kansas, in what became known as the Sacking of Lawrence.
Oh, fuck.
The invaders burned the Free State Hotel, destroyed 2 anti-slavery newspaper offices, and looted homes, stores, and targeted symbols of abolitionist resistance. Among their weapons was the old Kickapoo, or the Kickapoo cannon, which was a relic from the Mexican-American War.
And it has some fucking antiques.
That they stole from a pro-slavery group, which included the Kickapoo Rangers of the Kansas Territorial Militia. Jeez. Well, the Mexican-American War wasn't that long ago.
1840. Yeah. The cannon, later recovered by an anti-slavery faction, and returned to Leavenworth. But the attack left Lawrence reeling, intensifying the territory's violence. A digital remake of the flag, carried by the Palmetto Guards, a pro-slavery militia, later captured near Oskaloosa, it stands today as a stark symbol of the assault.
Okay, why'd they have to do a digital remake?
Right.
Wait, are they saying it's a screen of the flag, or is it like a digital remake and then they printed a flag or something?
Maybe.
I don't
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Days earlier, though, May 19th through the 20th, 1856, Republican Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts, he delivered his Crimes Against Kansas speech, which was a fiery denunciation of slavery's expansion. Sumner accused pro-slavery Democrats of consorting with the harlot of slavery, singled out South Carolina Senator Andrew Butler, likening his pro-slavery stance to the rape of a virgin, using provocative sexual imagery to vilify Butler's agenda. May 22nd, Butler's cousin, South Carolina Congressman Preston Brooks, retaliated by savagely beating Sumner with a heavy cane on the Senate floor, nearly killing him.
The attack shocked the nation, bringing violence into the heart of Congress and deepening the North and South rift. Southern Democrats celebrated Brooks, with pro-slavery newspapers declaring abolitionists must be lashed into submission. Oh, damn. Hundreds of Southern lawmakers sent Brooks new canes, one inscribed with "Him Again." And towns like Brooksville, Florida, Brooks County, Georgia, were named in his honor. Some wore necklaces made from pieces of shattered cane as a badge of solidarity. 2 weeks later, philosopher. Oh, they still have philosophers back then?
I guess they got him now.
Do they?
Maybe.
2 weeks later, philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, he condemned the attack. He said,
It took him 2 weeks.
right. He said, I do not see how a barbarous community and a civilized community can constitute one state. I think we must get rid of slavery, or we must get rid of freedom.
Uh-oh. Ooh. One or the other.
Oh, no shit.
Well, the violence in Kansas surged the night of May 24th, 1856. We all know this. We just covered this guy, abolitionist John Brown, enraged by the sacking of Lawrence and Sumner's beating, led his sons and followers to a pro-slavery settlement at Pottawatomie Creek. They dragged 5 pro-slavery men from their homes and hacked them to death with broadswords in a brutal act of retribution. Brown and his group escaped, emboldened to plan a larger slave insurrection at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, with funding from Boston abolitionists. The Pottawatomie Massacre, as it's become known, marked a grim escalation into Kansas's bloodshed. Yeah.
4th of July, 1856. Pierce's proclamations, they led to nearly 500 United States troops from Fort Leavenworth and Fort Riley descending on Topeka, led by Colonel Sumner, cousin of the beaten senator.
Oh,
damn, he's pissed.
wait, no.
This is personal.
The beaten senator was anti-slavery, and this dude's doing pro-slavery shit. What's up about that?
Wow, they aimed cannons at Constitution Hall, fuses lit, and ordered the Free State legislature to disperse, crushing its attempt to govern.
Wow.
By August of 1856, thousands of pro-slavery men formed armies and marched into Kansas. That month, John Brown and his followers clashed with 400 pro-slavery soldiers in the Battle of Osawatomie. A fierce but losing fight for the abolitionists. Yeah, John Brown got his ass kicked.
Poor guy.
The violence raged for 2 more months until Brown left Kansas and a new territorial governor, John Geary. He said, I'm taking office, boys. Geary's diplomatic efforts finally brokered a tenuous peace, halting the immediate hostilities, but leaving the territory scarred forever.
Well, after the intense bloodshed of 1856, including the sacking of Lawrence and the Pottawatomie Massacre, Kansas Territory settled into a fragile peace, punctuated by intermittent violent outbreaks over the next 2 years. The most notorious eruption came May 19th, 1858, with the Marie de Signes Massacre. Pro-slavery border ruffians from Missouri, led by Charles Hamilton, they ambushed 11 Free State men in Lynn County, Kansas, near the river.
Wow, the attackers shot and killed 5, wounded 5 others, and spared 1. Who faked his death.
So they didn't spare him.
Right? They thought he was dead. The massacre, a brutal act of pro-slavery vengeance, shocked the nation, reignited outrage over Kansas's ongoing strife. I hate that word. January 1859, another incident dubbed the Battle of Spurs. It unfolded with less bloodshed, but equal audacity. Abolitionist John Brown, still in force in Kansas, led a group of escaped slaves through the territory en route to freedom via Nebraska and Iowa. They're like, we're going to Nebraska and Iowa, boys. We're free.
Like where? Near Holton, they encountered a pro-slavery posse intent on capturing them.
No.
Brown's group, spurred by determination, evaded the ambush without firing a shot, which earned the name Battle of the Spurs for their swift horseback escape.
Fantastic.
The incident highlighted Brown's daring, and the persistent tensions in Kansas, even as major violence waned. By the end of 1859, Bleeding Kansas had claimed roughly 56 lives, a grim toll for a territory torn by the slavery question.
Yeah, that's crazy. Even after Kansas adopted the anti-slavery Wyandotte Constitution, October 1859, paved the way for the free state status, violence persisted. 1860, Indian agent. Oh,
I'm an Indian agent. They call me Colonel Cohen.
I got 60 dragoons.
Talking in the free state. Ding, ding, ding. It's a campaign of destruction.
1860, Indian agent Colonel Cohen, backed by 60 United States dragoons, targeted free state settlers in a campaign of destruction.
These are the U.S. too.
Yeah. They burned numerous homes of anti-slavery supporters while sparing those of southern-born settlers or pro-slavery advocates. A final act of retribution that underscored the lingering divide.
It's lingering.
Oh, wow.
Well, early 1861, the congressional gridlock over Kansas's admission to the Union broke, catalyzed by the seismic election of Lincoln as president in November of 1860.
They got a Republican in there. First time ever.
Lincoln's victory prompted 7 southern states to secede, like we know. Southern senators who had long backed Kansas' statehood to preserve the balance of slave and free states, they either withdrew from Congress or were expelled altogether. I don't think you're going to stay, bud.
No. Not today, Charlie. With the departure, the path cleared for Kansas' immediate admission as a free state of the United States of America on January 29th, 1861. Under the anti-slavery constitution that Kansas adopted, which had been approved by the Kansas voters in October 1859, the United States House of Representatives had already endorsed Kansas' free state status, and the Senate's newfound Republican majority sealed the deal, welcoming Kansas as a 34th state of the Union. Meanwhile, pro-Confederate factions in Missouri, Kansas' slave state neighbor, they pushed for secession. They're like, we need to get the fuck out of here.
But they didn't, though.
Briefly establishing a pro-Confederate government recognized by the Confederacy.
Well, as we all know, if you've listened to this show for some time, by late 1861, Union had solidified control over Missouri.
Yeah, they were like, motherfucker, I don't think so.
Thwarting any serious Confederate threat to Kansas' new free state government.
Yeah.
Without Missouri as a secure base, regular Confederate forces couldn't mount a significant challenge to Kansas. Still, the outbreak of the war in April of 1861 unleashed a new wave of violence along the border. Guerrilla warfare, which we knew, what's his name? Quantrell and his Raiders.
Right.
That was fueled by the bitter legacy of Bleeding Kansas. It erupted and persisted sporadically throughout the war. Pro-Confederate bushwhackers from Missouri and anti-slavery jayhawkers from Kansas engaged in brutal raids, ambushes, and reprisals, perpetuating the region's cycle of bloodshed. These irregular conflicts, rooted in the slavery divide, kept the border volatile, even as Kansas stood firm as a free state.
Ooh-wee.
I wonder if Kansas and Missouri are they rivals in any sports?
I don't think so.
They would be, right?
I don't think so. They might be.
Kansas, Missouri? I don't think so, because Missouri's like in the SEC and everything. Is Kansas in the SEC? Nope. They're in the Big 12.
Which is no longer a thing.
It is.
Big 12? No.
Yes, clearly.
Pac-12 stuff.
Right. That's going to do it. Bleeding Kansas. A little sports prelude to the Civil War and the divide that was forming in the old United States in the early 50s and 40s, actually. So there's that. Some more behind the battle stuff. We'll be back next week for probably another profile of a Union general this time. Maybe we'll finally do Sherman or Sheridan, but either one of those guys are going to be super long. Either a 2.5-hour episode or 2 hour-and-a-half episodes. I don't know. We'll see. So, yeah, we're back for them. So keep it tuned right here. Subscribe, share us with your friends, and leave a like, review, all that good stuff. Comment, and we'll be back next week for more Behind the Battles of the American Civil War. We are the Monthly Michiganders with Bang Dang.